The G-Wade Podcast with Deacon Dirty.
What's up, y'all? It's your boy G-Wade holding it down. G-Wade Podcast, kicking it alongside with my man Deacon Dirty, and we got a special guest on this podcast, this Zoom podcast today. I'm going to let him give the official titles. You know what I'm saying? But today's show, today's podcast is all about love, self-love. You know what I'm saying? Byron Jamal is on the podcast. What's up, fam?
Hey, G-Wade, how you doing today, brother?
I can't complain, man. I appreciate you taking the time, man, to kick it with us, bro.
Absolutely. Glad to be here, man.
All right, now I'm gonna give this little intro, then we're gonna back it up.
Let's go for it.
All right, so you got your life coach, you got your success coach, you even got your football coach. But what is a love coach?
Yes. Oh, that's a great question. A lot of people ask that all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Love coaching for me is the ability to really help people find love within and with others. So I actually say I help with spiritual connection, outwardly being with others and inwardly being with self.
Okay, do me one favor. Repeat that again, because there was a breakup in that explanation.
I got you.
We got the tail end of it, but repeat that again.
Oh, yeah, my pleasure. So I say that I help people find love upwardly, inwardly, and outwardly. So upwardly is with their spiritual connection, inwardly is with themselves, and outwardly is with other people in their relationships.
Okay. All right. Now, I know that at one point you resided in D.C.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that's my home, born and raised Washington, D.C., man, all day.
Love it. Love it.
You know what I'm saying? Now, which means you're familiar with the Go-Go.
Mm-hmm.
Which means you may be familiar with the Go-Go band Rare Essence.
Oh, yes. 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 And Frank Ski is one of my favorite brothers, right? He holds it down.
Oh, shout out to Frank Ski. And one of the songs, I guess you could say Rare Essence used to play, I don't even know the title of it, but it was something they used to do back in the day. Talking about if you're thinking about leaving home and going to Hollywood. Now, at the end of that song, they said this: if you want to deal with the world, you got to love yourself. And once you learn to love yourself, you can love everybody else. Yes. Now, that right there, I want to kind of pivot into you at that point, and let's talk about this self-love.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, man. Let me tell you, self-love is the foundation of all love in relationships. In fact, I tell people that if you personally have, let's go to measuring if you're baking or something. If you have half a cup love that you love yourself with, then even if someone comes with one full cup of love, you will not be able to appreciate it in its full totality because the other half will be flowing out. So a lot of times we end up in these kind of relationships. So we talk about self-love, but when you end up in these relationships, you say, this person's not doing enough for me. Right. It's often that you aren't to the level of self-love that you need to receive all that they're trying to offer. And so we end up calling people bad people who really were great people who we weren't good enough for them because we weren't good enough to ourselves.
So then the saying is actually true. It's not you, it's me.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is absolutely true, because Anas Nin says we see the world as it is, not as we are, not as it is. So you often see the world through your own lens. And if your lens is tainted by a lack of self-love, then you will end up seeing the world the same way.
Yeah, that's good. That's real good. Now let's back up a little bit.
Yes.
Like I said, you lived in D.C., but before that, if I'm not mistaken, if I understand it correctly, you were adopted or something into a nunnery or something like that?
Into a nunnery, brother. I was adopted into a nunnery. In fact, I think that's why I have some spiritual leanings. I've always been attached to the church in some way. But for me, when I was adopted, it was at a very early age. I was actually, once my parents gave me up, I was placed directly into a nunnery, and that's where So my mom said that she chose me because out of all the kids, I winked at her, and that's how she knew I was the right one. So
okay. That, or you knew you was gonna be a love coach later on in life.
Oh, now you're like, come on with it.
Right.
Get the right one. Get the right one.
Pick the right one. You know what I'm saying? That's what's up. And so, you are a former. I don't know if I want to say ex, so I'll say you're a former pastor.
Mm-hmm.
And how does a pastor become a love coach? Now I know we talk about in church we talk about the love of God,
Yes.
the love of Jesus.
Yes.
But you rarely hear the love of self or relationships.
Yeah, a lot of that honestly is because the church does a great job of making sure you're very dependent on the leadership. So if you love yourself too much, they feel like you may not need the church. So it's pretty good to keep you in a state where you're constantly needing more prayers, more self-esteem, more self-confidence, and you get that from the church, and that's the only source that you get it from. But the reason why I'm a love coach is because I feel like every pastor is really supposed to be a love coach. Every pastor is really supposed to help you connect those three ways I mentioned about upwardly, inwardly, and outwardly.
Right.
And I feel like we do an excellent job in the church of connecting upwardly, but not such an amazing job, if at all, connecting outwardly or inwardly. And so you end up having people who have bad relationships, even in the church. You have people who really don't love themselves, even though they have titles and positions and everything else. They're having to go to the altar every time they go to church because there's this self-love lack that's within them. And so my job as a love coach is to help people do all three. Again, I feel like the church is supposed to do that anyway, but I'm definitely using my calling to really help people in this way.
Okay, now what was the call to the church? How did you get that calling to become pastor?
Yeah, well, when I was growing up, man, I was heavy in the church. When we moved to Charlotte, North Carolina, my aunt and uncle were playing for the church, one of the churches, and I was the kid that was like, "Mom, let's go to church." Like I was that type of kid. So we went to the church. I got really involved. I was a youth choir president, youth ministry president. I started. I was actually licensed as a minister at that particular church. And when I went to college, I started leading 3 different churches, college programs. And from there, I became ordained through a non-denominational church up in DC, and I went to seminary. And ever since, just been doing that work. But when I stepped away, it was really because I was in my office and having too many one-on-ones with people saying things that I couldn't say in the pulpit. And I realized that the walls of church just weren't big enough in order to really hold the reality of what's going on. I tell people, man, the church is always at least a decade behind the times. It's always at least a decade behind, and it does that intentionally because it got to have some energy in order to be relevant. So for me, I said I wanted to be where people are when they are, and I realized that it was necessary for me to step away to do that.
Now, but what was that thing? Because you're saying the things that you could not say from the pulpit. Was it because they were too personal? Was it because it was too? I guess it would divide the church. What was the thing that said I can't say this stuff? You know what I mean?
Yeah, man. Let me tell you something. There are so many things that you can't say in a pulpit that you can say behind the scenes, and the same people hearing it will react 2 different ways. It's normally proven that people are more conservative in groups than they are one-on-one, right? So people will have a more conservative leaning in a group, in groupthink, than they will in one-on-one. So for me, anything in regards to divorce, in regards to sexuality, in regards to sexual preferences, you couldn't talk about how to keep your man or how to keep your woman doing things that are sexual at all. You couldn't talk about really dating multiple people because you wanted to figure out what you really wanted. It was that thought that you had to really pray, and the one that comes must be the one. And you got to name them and claim them and tag it and mag it and all that kind of stuff, So it was so funny. I remember growing up and having 3 different girls saying that God told me that I was their husband.
Isn't that crazy?
And I was like, well, I don't think God operates in confusion like that because I don't think I was supposed to have 3 wives. So, but that was what they were taught, is that if I see something I like, then it has to be the one.
Go for it.
It has to be it. It can't just be someone that I'm interested in and let me figure out why. To figure out more about me and my preferences, it has to be, this is it. And so there's a lot of people in church who are in tragic relationships that are keeping up appearances for the sake of they made a decision, now they're stuck. And I know that I can't even say that in over the pulpit.
You can't say
they'll be right in that office right afterwards and counselor. Hello.
They can't say, you can't say look at your neighbor and say
Can't look at your neighbor and say you might not be the one.
You might not be the one. Yeah, that's right. That's funny, bro, because there's the memes that always float around when it says, church girls and Christian girls be like, and the guy be like, hey, let's go on a date, and the next scene she's in a wedding dress. You know what I mean?
Oh, really? That is the truth. But that's how it's almost strange. It's almost, if you look at, it's funny, but if you look at those movies where you have the cults that are out in the woods, on plantations or farms, and the head cult master will marry many of the girls. It's much of that, it's like he chose you, so that's the one you get,
right.
and that's how it will be. And that's still a thinking, a real substantial thinking in the church, which is honestly hurting so many relationships. I say this all the time. I say if the church thought on relationships was so amazing, and most Black women are going to church, then there should be amazing relationships everywhere, but there aren't. So
yeah,
clearly something's not right.
But do you think it's that way because generally there's, in terms of ratio, there's always 27 to 1? You know what I'm saying? There's always so many women to one man, so everybody's clamoring. You know what I mean?
I think there's a number of factors. I think that's one of them, though. I do think that there are more women in church. I think that is part of the reason that men don't go to church. That's one of the reasons men don't go to church, is that when they go, they're bombarded with really, a lot of men would go for the fact of actually trying to find religion, like trying to find a spiritual practice, wanting to feel like they're tied into something, and not wanting to feel like they immediately have to go into a leadership role, or they immediately have to be search after by what, especially if they're a single man, the usher, a church mother coming up, baby, why you not married yet, or why you ain't got no girlfriend, asking questions like that. True. So a lot of men get run off from the church because of that one thing or another. Yeah. So that's number one why a lot of men don't go. It just isn't conducive. Honestly, it's because of the emotionalism of church. Most men don't like going. They feel like it's overly emotional. Like most men come for context, for information, and for upgrading, right? That's what men like. We like a good upgrade. Absolutely. So we want to upgrade in our lives. But when it comes to church, it feels like super overly emotional, but it appeals to more women.
You know what? I agree with that. I actually do agree with that. And also with the the pressures of the you my husband thing. Now, I'm not trying to suggest that, every church I stepped in that, I'm somebody's husband, but I am simply saying I understand. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely, brother.
Right. Yeah. Now, how do you balance the two? Because you were how long were you pastoring?
I was pastor for 8 years.
8 years. So for 8 years, I mean, clearly, for lack of a better word, indoctrinated. In the Word of God. Of course, the church culture. So how do you balance the two, having, I guess, at this point, stepped away and focusing more on love, self-love? Do you merge in the Christianity side of things, the love of Christ side of things?
Absolutely. In fact, every book I've ever written has a spiritual component to it. For instance, my new book, The 7 Steps of Self-Love, is based on the 7 steps that I felt when I looked at the creation story. I saw God creating, and in that creation, I saw the process of finding self-love within. Okay. And so I actually use the creation story as a backdrop. But when you read it, you will see that it's just a backdrop, because really the stories inside, the information is not written from a very churchy way. So it has the leading of spirituality, but it does not have the overindulgence of it, because we are truly, even though we're spiritual beings at all times, we still engage in real life all the time. So you need to have a healthy balance of both in order to really be happy.
And now describe a healthy balance, when it comes to love, self-love for that matter, and life.
And life, yeah. So self-love, when it's really balanced, doesn't have any other words attached to it, like ego or overconfidence or a high thinking of yourself. It is very much so never needing to put anyone else down, always thinking that even if you aren't better than them, you are definitely enough the way you are, feeling like there's no competition when it comes to another human being, feeling like where you are, even if it's not where you want to be, is enough for where you are, and you appreciate the journey of what it took to get you to this place. And so living in that space of appreciation, it constantly allows you to never feel like you're missing something, even if you're working on more. It's being able to balance who you are with who you want to be, and be okay with that. That level of balance is what we're able to do when we really love ourselves.
Yeah.
Another piece that I like to say about self-love is being able to see yourself as you have been, and see yourself as you are, and live in a constant state of appreciation as well. A lot of people don't love themselves because of things that have happened to them in the past, and things that they have done in the past. And so learning to move beyond those things, learning to live beyond those things, learning to love beyond those things is how you get back to a greater balance of self-love as well. So you're always balancing who you want to be, who you've been, and who you are now. And the most important thing is who you are now, and appreciating that. So as long as you give less power to those other two forces, the past and the future, and you really focus on now, then you have that ability to love who you are.
Right. Now, you have the 7 steps, the 7 ultimate steps to self-love.
Yes.
And I know, they laid out in the book. And so if y'all want to find out, you have to get the book. But, how just, on a practical, from a practical standpoint, how does one discover self-love? Like you mentioned, from things you may have done, things you may have done to people, may have been done to you, and now you're walking around maybe with guilt and shame, I guess. How do you discover the self-love? What do you do first?
So the first step in the 7 steps, and they are in sequence, is acceptance. So using, again, the backdrop of the creation story, first thing God did when God stepped on the scene was see that there was darkness.
Right.
Now, the acceptance of that is found in God not complaining. We never get any kind of message that God was disgruntled, that God was upset, that God was mad at the situation, that why is this darkness here? Why has darkness been here so long? What did I do to deserve the darkness here in this? No, none of that.
Right.
It was acceptance that darkness was there. In fact, it was a surveying of the darkness. God did an assessment of that darkness in order to accept the darkness. And so by being able to accept the darkness, now you can move to the next step. To learn to accept something as it is, you don't have the power to speak into what you want. And so that is why acceptance is so powerful. In fact, I say that acceptance is the birthplace of creation. Everything is created through the acceptance of what is missing. So there is no baby born that is not born in darkness.
Right.
There is no poem or song or book that is ever written that is not born with a blank page. Everything is created from a place of darkness or void or emptiness. And in order to birth anything out of it, you got to accept what it is.
So that means that, I don't know how, if it falls into it. So let's say, we're talking, if there was a rape, there's some kind of trauma in that regard, or even just being in a marriage that was abusive, is that the accepting of these things? Or how do you, because I imagine you have to get some kind of healing from those traumas before there's the acceptance, or is the acceptance that it happened and then move out?
Yes, absolutely. In all of those traumatic experiences, I am myself a victim of abuse, and learning to accept what has happened, learning through acceptance, forgiveness for what has not been. It also encompasses a steadying of expectations, being able to say, this is what I expected from life, and this is what I got, right?
Right.
And so being able to come to terms with the reality of that is what allows you, even in traumatic and through traumatic experiences, to be able to find the first step to healing. You will never heal what you refuse to open up and process.
Mm-hmm.
I often say that a heart that is closed cannot heal. And a lot of people operate from closed hearts and closed minds. They closed off the past to a place where they don't want any healing at all. They would rather just tuck it away. But acceptance is not tucking it away. It is not some passive dealing with it, some acting like it didn't happen. Acceptance is confrontation. It is saying, this is what it was. This is how it happened. And this is what it made me feel. And with all of that, then you can start processing, but this is who I am, and this is who I became, and this is not why it had to happen, but now that it's happened, this is why I am the way I am. And there you can begin to build from that place. A lot of people aren't building from it. They just tuck it to the side. And if you tuck it from the side, you're missing a great component of growth and development of who you actually are.
Yeah, and I've always said, and I've been saying it for years now, and I would always just say it this way: it's going to come out somewhere. And I posted something recently, and it's interesting that we are here having this conversation, but I posted something recently that spoke along that line, and then it said, because usually it's the relationships that you get into is when it starts to unpack, you know what I'm saying?
Yes, brother. You see it in all kinds of relationships. You see it, all the relationships that trigger you, you will see it. Now, I posted on my Instagram and social media platforms not long ago, I think about a week ago now, about different forms of relationship styles that are based on attachment styles that end up ruining relationships. And it is so true, man. I'm telling you, stuff that happens from your childhood often reflects back to who you are and how you are in relationships. So you got a lot of people that are extremely needy or very insecure, always looking for someone to appease, to give them more attention, to give them more time. It's never enough. It's never enough. They want more time, but then when they get the time, they feel like it's too much. There's this level of attachment styles that really cause people great trauma and harm to their relationships. And I see it all the time. I mean, it's not just in your non-platonic relationships. It's also on your job with your bosses, your coworkers. It's also with friendships. A lot of people are talking about that, people aren't loyal and all that kind of stuff. And I'm looking at them, well, what did you do here and how did you do it? I'll never forget, I had a client that told me very early on, first day, hey, Byron, I'm having struggle with friendships. And I said, okay, what's going on? He gave me a scenario of him being at a dinner party and everybody suggesting that there just be one check and everybody give equal amounts something. And I said, so what did you do during the situation? And his response was, well, I really didn't want to make a scene, so I just really tucked it in, but I was upset. I guess people could tell I was upset. And so I was like, okay, so you were passive aggressive. You were displaying it on your face, but now you're upset with your friend who saw that you were upset, but you didn't say anything. Instead of pulling your friend aside, having a different conversation, you didn't do any of that. So now your friend is supposed to read through osmosis that you upset, and so he needs to pull you aside on his birthday, have a talk with you about what is, So his issue when he realizes that he had an attachment style that wasn't healthy and that it caused him not to deal with things head on. He was afraid of confrontation. He was afraid of rocking the boat. He was afraid of speaking his mind and speaking his piece. He didn't know how to set healthy boundaries. And from just a session or two, we were able to work through a lot of that and get through it. It's not hard, which is my ultimate point here. A lot of it is not hard. It's just that we refuse to deal with it. And once you actually start dealing with it, you realize how easy it is now that you have matured in many ways beyond it to really go back and handle it.
Yeah. So, if let's talk within marriages, because now we're talking about things that happen to you, say as a youth or young, things that happen to you outside the marriage, and now it's starting to reveal itself within the marriage. What are some of the tips or advice that you give to? Is it a couples thing, or are you a one-on-one type of love coach?
So I'm actually both and. I do couples and I do singles. So and those who are seeking in a relationship but not married as well, those coming out of divorce. So I deal with all 6 phases of love. So
within a marriage, for something that's starting to reveal itself or unpack itself, what are the things that you're saying to them, or types of advice or suggestions?
So one of the main things that I normally suggest with a relationship is kind of, even if you're in it and having serious troubles, to go back to some of the foundational teachings I have on singleness,
Okay.
because a great single makes a great partner. A subpar single makes a subpar partner. And the more you can get in the self-love bubble, the more you can learn to love yourself, the more you can appreciate yourself, the more you can appreciate who you are, what you believe in, what you stand for, your core values, things that are very core and fundamental to being, then you actually end up making a better partner just off a GP. You know, you
Gotcha.
end up doing it because it, I say 7 steps as well, but the phases of love go from singleness all the way into marriage, and then divorce would be the last one that we try to avoid. But understanding that every phase before it, I say that the singleness phase is your selfishness phase. It's your ability to love yourself, learn yourself, know what you want, know what you don't want. So if you're already in a marriage, you got to go back to that and really figure out what it is that you want. Those things can change. Those things can adapt. Those things can grow. And so really doing some work around self. But then in your dating phase, you figure out what you want from someone else. You figure out what you need from someone else to make you happy. If you're already in marriage, you already passed that part. So you got to figure out what about them you can accept. Because I learned a long time ago that love is not so much about what you like about a person. Because honestly, you can find anything to like about somebody.
Right.
It's about what you don't like but can handle. And learning what about your partner that made you fall in love with them, what about them that you appreciate, and learning what gets on your last nerve. And when you identify those things, again, accepting them, calling them out, you're able to better deal with them. Then if you move into the relationship phase, relationship is learning your power of commitment. Because you've been single and dating. So those 2 phases are not much about the other person, honestly. Dating is more about you getting to know what you want, and singleness is about knowing who you are and loving it. So it's not until the relationship phase that you are really committing your energy, your time, your effort, your full attention to someone else. And that requires commitment. And learning to be committed to another individual in your everyday life is a completely new task. It's a different muscle to flex. And that's why relationships are so important. This is why I discourage fast engagements and fast marriages, because I say it takes time to do that. And last piece is engagement, where you learn how it is to live with somebody, to be with somebody, to be closer with somebody, to start having titles that are more meaningful with somebody. And that time is so precious too. So if somebody's coming to me for relationship counseling, we're going back through the very beginning, and we're starting from scratch to figure out where are the missing pieces so that we can build better. A lot of people just want to focus on, well, what is the relationship like? But no. What is your personal life, your individual life like? So that we can better determine how you fit together.
Got you. You know, you're talking about being single and all that sort of stuff. Now, I heard you not long ago recently talk about being a great single. And that, you know, that could also work against you when, I guess, if you're out here trying to find a mate, trying to find, you know, someone to fall in love with, but your social media says you're a great single. You're not ready for this marriage of this life of marriage.
Yeah. So this is a concept that I came to because of my love coaching. I realized I had these amazing professionals, entrepreneurs, people that were doing their thing. They were making moves, and they were amazing. When I looked at their pages, I saw something very similar, though. They were too amazing. They were too amazing when it came to being single. And what I mean by that, and what I meant by that when I first spoke to them about it, was that you can look like you are enjoying your singleness so much that you don't want anybody.
Is that the little Duval, living my best life?
Living your best life. I don't need you. There is no, especially women that say that. I don't need a man and all that kind of stuff. There's just a single and miserable when it comes to love, but they don't need a man and all that kind of stuff. But when you say things like that, and when you post pictures that are like, I don't need anybody, living my best life, all that kind of stuff, it says to somebody, well, you don't need me, because if you are all good, if there's nothing that you want, then what do you need? So I live off of the scripture that says, if you seek, you shall find. but you have to ask and it shall be given, right? A lot of people aren't putting out the ask out there. A lot of people are wanting to look so self-confident, self-secure that they don't look like they actually are open to the possibility of it. It's
Okay.
puts out there that they want a job, may get hit up by a recruiter. But the person who looks very secure in their job, the person who looks like they're happy, the person that doesn't look like they're going anywhere, looks like they're locked in, and looks like they're fine, they're not probably going to get as many people reaching out to them for that particular thing.
Gotcha.
And so it's the same way with love. It is actually exactly the same as that. Because if you are picturing yourself as somebody who is complete without a person in your life to share love and life with, then it's quite often that you will not have people interested in reaching out. If they are, they simply won't because of intimidation. I'll give you another example. It's like the person who's out with their friends, they're out with 5 friends. This happens with a lot of women, but men do it too. But they'll be out, they'll be having the best time, and then they'll be mad when they get home that night and say, well, nobody really tried to reach out to me or talk to me tonight. And it's kind of like, well, you were looking like you were having such amazing time and you were with your girls and y'all were living it up and laughing and joking and everything else. And nobody's coming to that.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like you have to find ways to pull yourself aside, look available in order to get people interested in wanting to reach out to you.
And I guess that would fall in the, like you mentioned, intimidating because, you know, if you see a woman that you find attractive and you like, hey, but she's surrounded by 3, 4, 5 of her girlfriends, and they're enjoying themselves. But at the same time, I guess the guy is saying, yeah, she is enjoying herself. But at the same time, I'm scared to go over there because I might get rejected. Because she's over there having a good time.
Absolutely. And people all the time, no one wants to be rejected. I don't care how much self-love, I don't care how much rejection is never feels good.
Yeah,
like I would never tell somebody you should feel good with rejection. No. Rejection is something that is a part of life, but it doesn't mean you have to like it, right? It's just like taxes. So they're necessary in some way, but you know, it doesn't mean you like it. And so when it comes to rejection, I treat them like taxes. You realize that you can take the chance of not being rejected, but you also don't get what you want. But if you're the type of person that's setting people up, if you know you're creating a situation that will be just, then it's less likely that they will step into that situation when you know that rejection is something that could be possible.
Repeat that line again, because there was a breakup there, and I want to make sure that the listeners get that.
Yeah, you got to make sure you're not setting someone up to be in a situation where there's a high probability of rejection.
Gotcha.
So if you know that you're going to be out with 5 friends, you got to find your way. Maybe y'all already talk about, especially if they're already single, y'all need to go y'all separate ways for like a couple of minutes at a time throughout the time you're out. Like whatever you can do, break up in twos, do something, you know, like make it easier for somebody to step up to you, and don't make it hard for people to want to engage you.
I like that. I never even thought about it that way, but you're right. You know, if you kind of, for lack of a better, separate the herd for a moment, kind of move around, maybe to give that person the confidence to now walk up to you.
There you go. There you go. See, it's simple stuff, but it's stuff that we came out together, we sticking together, we leaving together, you know, and you are leaving together because you're not going to leave with nobody else.
Yeah. Right. So how should your profile look? How should your social media look if you are single, really deep down inside wanting to be married? But how should your social media look? Should you be in the Bahamas with your girlfriend? Should you post it that you out here on the beach alone? Like how does that look?
Yes. So you should definitely be posting things about your life that you enjoy. So pictures with family members are great because they show that you're family oriented.
I'm guilty. I mean to cut you, but I'm horrible at that.
Go for it.
I'm very horrible at that.
Why?
Because I don't know. It's something about my personal life that I, for some reason, feel like I just want to keep. But to your point, I get it all the time. Yes. You never post personal pics.
I'm telling you, by posting, these are the strategic things I would post. So first of all, never post negative quotes about relationships or dating, right? Like never do
You know,
that.
dogs.
Never do that. Never do that. That'll be like the easiest way to keep a partner away from you is to be like swipe next
Swipe
because you go
in.
next, right? Great pictures with family and pets, if you have them. That's a great way to say that you are loving, that you are caring, that you are considerate, that you value family and family time,
Okay.
that you can put other people ahead of yourself. All right. So that's like number one, if I were to say, what is best to post? Family and pet pics, honestly,
Wow.
are number one. Number
Okay.
two would be you engaging life and having fun. Having pictures, especially with friends, is great. Normally, you want to do, if you're trying to attract somebody, more group pictures than solo pictures. And I know that sounds weird,
When you say
but solo
solo, you're
pictures,
by yourself?
yes.
By
So more group pictures with other people as opposed to you by yourself, because pictures by yourself says that you are more into yourself, that you're more self-centered, and that it is just about you.
Dude,
But
you're gonna
when
have
it
me
comes
delete my
with
whole
other
IG.
people, yes, right. And so this is like, if you did a snapshot of the first 3 rows, then it needs to be a mixture of things
Okay.
that are inspiring, that are, hey, open to this. Maybe it's something positive about relationships, and you say something, I'm looking forward to this kind of relationship one day. Those kind of things, a mixture of family, mixture. So when you add all that in together, it doesn't have to be all of anything, because as I say, even too many vitamins, your body rejects a little bit throughout the course of the day.
Yeah.
So you only so much that your body will take in.
Exactly.
So you don't want to have all dog pictures. Now we think you're strange, okay? You don't want to have all pics of your little niece, right? You don't want to have all pics of your little niece. We also gonna think you're strange. And you don't want, all pics with your best friend, because at that point it might look like y'all hooking up. So it's a good balance of everything.
Gotcha.
And by doing that, you end up looking like someone who is available, yet still enjoying your life, still happy, still upbeat, and not bitter or distressed or depressed. So it makes you look well-rounded and even, which is the ideal mate.
Y'all hear that? So you have to go check re-examine your social media pages to see if you are out there footloose and fancy free, or to see if you are desperately seeking love. I guess it does send a signal. I never even thought of it that way, because again, I get it all the time. Why you don't ever post personal pics? I'm like, I just like to keep my personal life personal. You know what I'm saying? But I'm guilty.
Hello. You're gonna make me do a post on that. I might do that for my love talk tomorrow, because it is so necessary for people to understand what their social media says about them.
That's good. That's a whole topic, dude. That is a whole topic. Absolutely.
That is the whole situation.
And you just mentioned, you ready to do something regarding it. So let me ask you this about, and I'm sure you've heard of it. I just recently took it just for the fun of it. That love language test.
Yes.
How does that merge or morph in or ease into what you do? Is that something you like?
Honestly, I have my own version of that through a self-love language test. I do agree with the love languages. I think that they are spot on, but here's what I actually think on a deeper level. Now that I've been doing more of this self-love work.
Gotcha.
I've realized that the self-love languages are a great indicator of where your strengths are, right? Things that you can accept, things that you appreciate, things that you value, the ways that you give things out. But I think its biggest challenge is that it doesn't encourage you to learn to appreciate the other styles just as much, right?
Right.
So just because you appreciate more gifts doesn't mean someone giving you time is a bad thing.
Thank you.
Right?
Absolutely.
So it shows you where your areas of weakness really are. That's what I use it for now when I have clients do the test, because it's still free and it's out there. I have them do the test so that they can identify more what's easy for them.
Okay.
Right. So we don't have to talk about those things. I don't need to talk about you giving gifts, because you're naturally a gift giver. So that's something we don't need to talk about. But now I know that when it comes to words of affirmation, those things don't hit you? Why don't words of affirmation impact you?
Mm-hmm.
What was going on when you were growing up that words of affirmation, you didn't get enough of them, or you got them in the wrong way, you got them from the wrong people? What is it? And it always works. It always comes out that the areas where we don't receive things are the areas where we can't give things.
Mm-hmm.
It's normally some trauma, some issue, some deficiency or neglect that happened early on that causes us to be that way.
Well, you know what? For full transparency, right here, I will agree with that 100%. And the reason why is because when I took the test, I joked because I laughed, as when the rankings came out.
Yeah.
And for me, touch was 0 or whatever, feel or whatever that thing was.
Yes.
But number one was receiving gifts, high on the list.
Yeah.
And I laughed, but at the same time I said, but it seemed like the test, and maybe it was just more, the algorithms were moving it, but it seemed like the test was pitting two things against each other. In other words, do you like to give, do you like to receive stuff, or you prefer people to rub you on the back?
Yes.
And so if you looking at the two things for me personally, I like to receive stuff. I don't care to be rubbed on the back. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? So if you keep pitting those questions up to each other, it's going to always be a big divide. So I laughed about that. But at the same time, I had to look at it and say, but it's true.
But it's true.
But it's true.
Yes.
Yeah. So you're spot on.
Yeah, it's the test itself. I have proven that it works, and that it really does speak to where people are.
Mm-hmm.
It's long enough, and it has enough questions that, like you said, pit two things against each other to really come out with a substantial answer.
Mm-hmm.
But also, it really does speak to more of what it is that, like you said, if you really don't care about touch as much, then your natural response will be to not select that versus anything, right?
Right,
anything.
Absolutely.
So hence you get 0. But then it's like, okay, well, why not touch? Why is, because when I study, I study people too. And so like one of the people I study is Oprah. When she had her show, the Oprah Winfrey Show, she would, with guests, touch them all the time. It would be a hand on the back. It would be a reach in, lean in. It would be, because human nature is that touch is actually very, very, without sexual intimacy, still touch by itself speaks to connection and connectivity. So the absence of touch says that I don't need or desire the connectivity of human touch so much. Now, we are noticing statistically that more people are selecting 0 on physical because of technology. So it could be there's more of a technological leaning that you have versus, wanting to be with and around people in that sense, that you're sometimes maybe being a little safer when it comes to connections and not being heard and all those kind of things with physical touch. Because physical touch says intimacy, it says closeness, it says connected.
Yeah. Okay. I got you. That's spot on. Now, so dating, folks out there dating, we out here dating or whatever. What should, and I guess it still all boils down to self-love, but in dating, what should one, male or female, male and female, should be looking for? What's the expectations in dating? I know I see a lot of posts now, I'm dating for marriage or something like that. While I guess some may be discovery of self, but what do you think people should be expecting during dating or looking for?
So this is one of the things, when we talked earlier about the church, this is one of the things that really created bad time for people in the dating world, because you're taught that you're not supposed to date often, or you're a hoe or a slut or other things like that. When in reality, you want to date as often as you have time to do so, time and energy. If you have the time and the energy and sometimes the resources financially to do so, do as much of it as you can. Because for me, again, as I mentioned earlier, the dating phase is all about you getting to know what you want and need. So the more you date, the more you have a better picture, a clearer picture of what it is that fits you. You know better where you want to go, who you want to go with, what they should look like. You know better what type of style you like. My people that say, I don't really have a type. That means you haven't dated enough. I can tell you haven't dated enough when you say I don't have a type, you know, and that's the safe answer of, oh, I just like people for who they are. But that's
Right.
all BS. I'm telling you now, that's all BS because everybody has a preference.
Right.
If I said, hey, do you prefer the beach or the mountains? Most people would say one or the other. If I said, hey, would you prefer very hot or very cold? Most people would be like, I like the one or the other. If you said red or blue, most people would say one or the other. And so we are creatures who like preferences. We have preferences. We should have preferences because it helps us find more fulfillment, be happier, whatever is more in tune with who we are. So
Right.
for the people that give me that crappy answer of, oh, I like all types, yeah, that's cute. But that means you really haven't done your homework. See, so when I was in class, especially English class, when you could read something, kind of BS it because you had the Cliff Notes. I had those teachers that they knew the Cliff Notes were out there, and so they would ask questions that weren't in the Cliff Notes.
Gotcha.
And a lot of people out there are doing Cliff Notes on their dating, right? They're like, oh, I like nice people. That's in the Cliff Notes. Oh, I like people that are funny. That's in the Cliff Notes. So funny about what? What type of humor? You know, are they goofy funny? Are they like Chris Rock funny? Are they, you know, what type of funny?
Right.
Knowing I like people that aren't too short. Well, what's too short? Is it 5'9"? Is it 5'10"? Is it 5'8"? Is it 4'9"? Because too short is too short depending on what you want. So you can't have the Cliff Notes when it comes to dating because you will end up selecting something or someone that is not fitting you ultimately, and you act like you didn't know it wasn't coming, but actually every part of you knew that it wasn't associated with what you really wanted in the first place. But because you didn't do your homework the way you were supposed to, you end up saying yes and getting stuck when you should have said no.
Now, I know you sat down with many of people, couples, married or just dating, and well, the dating might be easier. So let's go to the marriage side.
Sure. Yeah.
Where I don't, you know, whether you talk to them or counsel them together or separately, has there been a moment where you're looking at them or thinking in your mind like, ooh, they should have never, this shouldn't be the thing here, you know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. I can easily, and I'm very honest with people about this too. Okay. And this is why I'm a coach and not a therapist or a counselor. A therapist or a counselor typically would not tell you, you know, this isn't going to work and this, you know, all that. But I'm a coach and I'll tell you if it's wrong, it's not right. But when I'm saying it, it's not so that people break up. It's so that they're very aware that they have greater challenges than maybe a couple that chose better would have. And that it can still work because much of love and relationships is about decision making. It's about making a decision and sticking with it. It's about accepting, again, going back to acceptance, accepting things as they are, accepting what you can change and what you can't, certain aspects of a person you'll never change, and understanding why things are important to you. So like for a couple that are just naturally arguing that one person likes to go out, the other person doesn't, then why does it bother you that they do? So why does it bother you? You're not the one, they're not asking you to go out.
Right.
So why is it bothering you that they do, right? So that kind of personal work again, but also asking you knew they went out before, you went out with them before. So what's the problem now? You know, like, so what's changed? Normally like some infidelity or some trust issues. And so getting back to the stuff that really matters. But again, it's all about choices. And it's about sticking with the choice that you make. Look, we've all made bad choices with jobs. We've made bad choices with eating habits, you know, that late night, the Wendy's pull up, McDonald's pull up that you know you shouldn't have been doing. That Waffle House order that you were just like, I need it. We've all had those and we live with them. And there comes a point where your body either accepts it and it processes well, or it does not and it rejects it, right? And learning what your body needs most, what your love life needs most is either rejection or embracing something for what it is and moving forward.
Okay, yeah, I'm with you. When it comes to you know, moving in timing, you know, I guess, you know, if you are, I guess, settled within yourself You know what? Let's use an entrepreneur. You know, we out here hustling, we grinding.
Yeah.
I just posted something just about that. Hustle, grinding all my life, Nipsey Hustle. You know what I'm saying? And you know, and so that is like the focus. You know, I would love for you had to come to the studio, WadeWorksStudios, but you know, in the future, definitely would love to have you come through. We'll do a panel and have you talk with the women and men together. You know what I'm saying?
I'm here for it.
And but you know, the entrepreneur, you know, you go to my IG page, it kind of reeks of I'm working. You know what I'm saying? How does one incorporate the love, not personal self, but you know, a love life, or you know, the dating world, a dating life? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, you know, I used to use the word balance a lot. And I've learned to really use that sparingly, because in many times balance does not mean the same things for two different people.
Gotcha.
First of all, what you can handle are two different things, right? And so some people balance multitasking well, others not so much. So instead of balance, I use the word priorities. You know, so what are your priorities in order? You know, for me, they are my spiritual life. After my spiritual life, which encompasses self-love, then I would go to my family, then I would go to my friends, and then my business. And it's really in that order. And so that helps me prioritize when I know if something comes up. The business can wait a moment because I got a family issue. Or I have a spiritual self-love. I need to pull away. I realize I'm not in the best space. I need to figure out, you know, take some time in the mountains, get it, you know, whatever it is. You can fit it in with priorities, and you can give yourself, by having and keeping, which is what I do with a lot of my clients, have them do a better job of their calendars, managing their time better. But you know, they come in thinking we're just going to talk love, and we end up talking about what's on your calendar.
Gotcha.
You know, how are you budgeting? Why are you having to work so hard? How much money are you wasting that you could work less and still live the lifestyle you have? So you could make time. And why is doing that one extra thing to make you look like you were more successful so important when you could enjoy life with someone? Here's my thought. And this is why I say it. G.K. Chesterton has a quote that says, every act is an act of self-limitation. To choose anything is to limit yourself from everything else. So for instance, if you were to go forward, you can't go backwards. If you were to choose to go up, you can't go down. If you were to choose to be on this call, you couldn't be on another call. If you were to choose to go to Publix, you couldn't be at Kroger at the same time. Everything is limiting yourself whenever you make a decision.
Gotcha. And
you have to understand what limitations are. So if you are someone who has made a decision to have a child early on, it's only you, then that's a limitation. It's a blessing, but it's a limitation as well. So that decision also brings a limitation of your time, your energy, and your resources. Understanding what that limitation means, now you have to operate inside the limitation. And so if you decide to have a relationship, you got to understand that's a limitation. You got to understand it's a limitation. It should not be the sacrificial lamb. Your relationship should not take a back seat because you want the success. You have to understand that a relationship has its own requirements, its own limitations, and you have to honor them. And so that's what has to be taught, is that relationships aren't the afterthought. They're not just the complement to something else I'm doing. It's like, well, this meal, which is my life of success and entrepreneurship, comes with the side rolls. You know, that's not how, you know, that's not how you should look at it. You know, all of that should be on the same plate. And that's the point, is when you look at it that way and you treat it like that, and you prioritize things and you do better with your calendar and you do better with your budget, you're able to better fit in the time that is absolutely essential to make a relationship work.
Okay. Now, you had mentioned, I heard you mention this in an interview, you said plan more than you push. What does that mean?
Oh, that is, When I say absolutely essential to your life, because in the art of planning, when you have really sat with something, understood, done a SWOT analysis of its strengths, weaknesses, of its opportunities and its threats, really understanding what is going to be required when you do this. So a lot of people have great ideas, and this is what it means in simplistic terms. A lot of people have great ideas and they want to do amazing things. First time I wrote my first book, I just thought, it's writing, and then I'll get a cover and I'll get a ISBN number and we'll sell it, right? Did not understand the amount of work that it took to write a book, to edit a book, to promote a book, to consistently push a book, consistently talk about a book. Did not understand at all. And so my concept, I was pushing a lot more than I should have if I would have really planned.
Gotcha. Okay.
And so I ended up expelling more energy than I should have. But also on the flip side of that, being able to plan allows you to align better with the things that you want to achieve. Okay. And when you're aligned with purpose and your passion, when those two things align together, your purpose and your passion, when those two things align together, you find that things come easier. So even though it's a grind, it's not a hard grind, right? For instance, I use this analogy a lot, and I love this analogy of a person with a kite in the wind. So you got the person that's grinding and they got the kite in their hand and they're running. There's no wind, so they're running, running down the meadow, running down the field, and the kite's going higher, but they're using all their energy. Eventually, the kite's going to come down because they're going to lose their breath. Now, they've accomplished what they wanted, but it wasn't sustainable.
Yeah, okay.
But then you have the person that is intentional. They plan for when it's going to be windy. And they are able to go in the same field, stand still, push the kite in the air, do the push, and the kite will start going higher. And they don't have to exert anything but holding on to their purpose. And that is where planning comes in handy, because when you plan, you end up now having more energy to invite other things into your life because you're not leaving exhausted. A lot of people leave their business and entrepreneurial lives exhausted because they haven't planned. And so now when they're trying to date and have relationships, my God, that is hard work today. So you come in and just want to fall out. Fall asleep on the phone.
Right.
Like, babe, hello. Hello. The first time that's cute. The first time they're like, oh, he fell asleep with me. And then like the fifth time they're like, wait a minute.
Listen, you know what I'm saying? Exactly. I got you. I like that example. That is a very good example, in fact, because you're right. You do exert a lot more energy when you sit there running down that whatever to get that kite to stay in the air versus letting the wind do what the wind do.
Let it do what it's going to do. And I promise you it will. I promise you that the wind blows at the right time, in the right season, the wind blows. And learning to just be patient sometimes, to pause, to wait. I tell this to my clients who are looking for mates all the time. I say, sometimes it's not the season. Sometimes you need to do some preparatory work in order to really get ready for the relationship that you want, so that some of the big ticket items, like if you're just entering school, you're trying to get a new degree, maybe you need to not focus on a relationship right now until you get used to the system, until you get used to the schedule, until you get used to the workflow and the expectations from your professors. Maybe if you just have a child or a parent passed and now more responsibilities put on you, maybe you need to pause on seeking for a few months and figure out what your life is going to look like. Stop bringing people into your confusion. Stop bringing people into your lack of preparedness. Really bring people into what everybody wants to be in. And nobody wants to be in a raging river. Everybody wants to be in a gentle stream. True. So when you have the opportunity to really be in a gentle place where you know what's going to flow, then you can start inviting people in.
I like that. Now, last question. Well, next to the last question. Who does the love coach go to for advice?
Oh, that's good. I actually have a few things that I've set up in order to make sure that I have good spaces for me to release. It's very important for every pastor, every therapist, every counselor, and anybody who does this work, even yourself who gives out information and is on shows, to have a space and a source where they can release. So for me, it is a part of the shows that I've created. My Love Talk Lives on Tuesday that I share and I release my own story, and I mix in things that help other people. But I also then have The Heart, where I interview people on there who are normally therapists and counselors and other people who do love work, to talk about love and success and really being able to prioritize it too. But outside of those two things that I've set up as kind of cushions for me, I still go get my own help from trusted sources of therapists and counselors that are close to me, who do this work, who are close to how I think and how I feel. A couple of them I've actually had them on the show, and that's how I met them. And I love their energy so much that I, reached back out to them for that. So it's important. But I also have business coaches, and I have financial coaches, and I have a range of people that help me in different ways to make sure that I am not stagnant or stalled in any area. And I encourage everybody who is looking for love in any way, shape, or form, or already found it, but know that there are some big potholes in your relationship, get help. The same way you would if your business was struggling, the same way if you had tax issues, the same way if you had credit issues, go get help. I promise you, it is the best thing that you can do for your life. What I've learned is that help, when you get it, it speeds up the process of getting stuff back in line.
Gotcha.
You try to do it on your own and doing all the research and figuring out, all the Googling of what to do when your man and what to do when all that stuff, and trying to read all the articles. Just get you some help. They will say a few simple things that will help get you back online. So that's what I do, and that's why I do it, because I found that it's absolutely essential to make sure that I stay in line.
Awesome. Now I want you to give out your social media and where they can find your book and all books and all of that. But before I do, if someone goes to your social media page right now, what is the takeaway what do they take away from Byron Jamal's IG page? They walk away with that man is in a relationship. He's focused on his business. The book is his life. What do they see? What is their takeaway from your IG page?
So right now, they will see a few things. They will see, number one, I am happily in a relationship. I am loved by many people who understand that I really just represent love. They will see that I'm trying to give out advice on the free 99 for love and dating and relationships. I give out tips and tools all the time. They will see that I do promote my books and my upcoming courses. They will also see that I'm consistent. And that is one of the main things that I wanted people to see out of the work that I do, is consistency. Not just consistency in posting, because you can post anything, but in the quality of the posts that I make. So I actually put a lot of time and effort into my posts. Like today, when I posted just recently, when I posted the 11 things that, the 11 habits that you have that reflect how you're a bad texter. Those 11 things, already people, their responses were hilarious, but they were like, everybody can relate to them. It's things that are necessary, that are relevant, that are current. And again, to show you that there's a spiritual side to love, and you should never get love advice from somebody who doesn't pray.
I like that. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So what is your social media, and where can they find you and your books? Because this is now your 5th book, 7 Ultimate Steps to Self-Love. Yes. Where can they find your books and find you online, social media?
Easy to find. You can find me at byronjamal.com, which kind of links to everything. But you can also find me on Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook. And I do a little Snapchat chatting and here and there, a little TikToking too.
A little TikTok,
A little TikToking here and there.
Gotcha.
I'm a little older. I'm right on the edge of young and old, so it's a little interesting.
So
all of that, right? I'm on the seesaw of that.
Right.
But you can find me easily at Byron Jamal at all of those locations.
Okay.
One, sign in to to find them all. So that's good.
That's awesome. Well, brother, I certainly appreciate you sharing, giving us these tips, helping us navigate through our love life and learning ourselves, because the self-love is most important. I started it off with Rare Essence quote with this: if you want to deal with the world, you got to love yourself. And I'm all in total agreement with you that it is, self-love it's the best love. I mean, outside of God's love, but it's the best love. And the book, good read, people, go get it. 7 Ultimate Steps to Self-Love. And I'm sure you can go to Amazon, probably from the website as well, and get a copy of that book for you to read and enjoy and start healing. You know what I'm saying? Brother, keep us posted on everything that's going on in your world, man. We want to help support what you're doing and promoting the book. And just, if you got some book signings, I know the pandemic got us kind of thrown off a bit, but but want to support you in any way we can, man, because enjoying the work that you do.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate that. And for all your viewers, the self-love 7 steps to self-love fast track course is now live. So go to my website and you'll see under courses that's available.
Awesome. It's your boy G-Wade holding it down, G-Wade Podcast, kicking it alongside with my man Deacon Dirty.
The G-Wade Podcast. Bringing you the cool interviews, the hot topics, and all that other crap. The G-Wade Podcast with Deacon Dirty.